why are you here? This is sidetrack. Go have fun. No, thank you for being here. I really appreciate you all. And well, as our lovely MC already said, I'm here today to talk about raising the bar. So let's jump right into it. She's already also mentioned that my name is Lorenzo Sciandra. This is my face, but maybe you recognize me more like this. My name is Kelset. I've been a maintainer for React Native since 2018. I'm a senior software engineer at Microsoft. And what I want to talk about today is basically the journey that internally at Microsoft, me and a few colleagues have been going through. You see, our job, specifically me and my colleagues, is to be invisible. And you can be like, well, you suck at that. You're on stage. I can see you. You're already failing. And like, yeah, fair enough. But let me give you a bit of an explanation. So first off, when you think about React Native, of course, you think about mobile apps. And at Microsoft, yes, we do use React Native a lot in some of our biggest mobile apps. Of course, these are mostly brownfield apps. So we have some parts native and some parts in React Native. But not only that, we actually do use React Native on all the other platforms that you can think of. We use it for macOS and Windows. And we had a talk at Chain React earlier this year from two of my colleagues, Chiara and Shivan. And I would highly recommend you watch it because it really dives into the desktop aspect of using and maintaining React Native for those platforms. But not only that, a few years back, we did introduce the concept of the Microsoft Galaxy. You see, Microsoft is a big company. We don't only have one monorepo, we have many of them. And when we work on React Native, of course, you want to have something that can be used across different apps. So for example, I think we recently have done the full rollout of one of the main React Native experiences across all the main apps. And for that to happen, basically, we have all these different monorepos interacting with each other, but that increases the complexity of using React Native by quite a bit. So that's where me and my colleagues come in. We basically make sure that all these different parts of the galaxy, all these different planets can use the code, can take the code from one monorepo, put it in the other one, and everything should work. So we are invisible in that sense because we want people to flawlessly be able to work on their code and then that code to go into the final app, into the what we call a host app, usually the products that you use. To say in a more proper term, though, what we try to do is basically enable developers working on our products to leverage the tooling instead of fighting with it. And you know, you're all, well, some of you are React Native developers, so probably you know that there can be potential pain points. And at Microsoft, we have a few that are very specific to this Galaxy approach that we have. So like when we have hundreds of engineers spread across many different projects, if everyone has different needs, if they use different versions of React Native, different versions of their libraries, that creates a problem. If the bundle size is too big, that's definitely a problem because our apps like Office, that's one app for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, like all in one mobile app. As you know, like there are some policies on the stores, so we're always like just right below that, and we need to keep it there, of course. And upgrading. We all know the story when it comes to upgrading. I see everyone just like, oh, God. And I'm sorry, it's partly my fault. We're trying to be making better. But yeah, and sometimes the code doesn't work. Like it works on your side, on your monorepo where you do development, and then you send it to Outlook, and then they put it into their code base, and it doesn't work. So a lot of these things, of course, cannot be necessarily solved at the core level. So by sending PRs against React Native, sometimes we need to take things into our own hands. And to do that, we've been working on two main solutions. The first one is what we call the test bench. This is called the React Native Test App, and it's basically a sandbox React Native app where we have abstracted away like 99.9% of the pain points of using a vanilla React Native app. This one supports from 64 to 72, and we're working on 73. And basically, this means that you have this sandbox, and you can very quickly, and I'll show you in a bit, swap from one version of React Native to the other so that in your test environment, you can verify that all the versions that your host apps are using, their code is going to work, basically. It does support the new architecture. It supports the Expo config plugins. We're trying to make it as usable as possible for the community too. And we also have an experimental single app mode. So if you have a small project side thing that you want to try to, put into a different vanilla React Native app, please talk to me because we're looking for Sacrifice. People we can, have a partnership with and try these things out. And of course, it's not just for iOS and Android. We care about macOS and Windows too. So out of the box, you throw your code in there and it works across all these different platforms. You don't need to take care of those. The other bucket, the other main solution that we're working in is basically improving the overall developer experience and creating extra plugins for our needs. And we've put all of these different things that all list you can kind of see there. It's very long. We've put all of that into this monorepo called RNX Kit, which is React Native Experiences, and Kit is like, because it's a toolkit, like we put everything in there and you can just pick and choose whatever you want. Across the various things, we do have some plugins for Metro. For example, the main thing that we have is a tree shaker for Metro, because right now it doesn't have it. We do have custom profiles for Babel, ESLint, and a drop-in replacement for a CLI even, because basically we wanted extra tweaks, extra flags that you want to pass to the CLI when you do, for example, the bundling. And we just like, well, if we just like put a bit of an overhead on top, we can just like ship it to all our internal customers and be like, you just run bundle, and all the extra configs, we've taken care of that. And we do have a special talks announcing the RNX Kit repo in 2022 by Adam Foxman. And yeah, so as I was mentioning, like one of the examples of things that we have in there is the tree shaking in Metro. Of course, all of this is open source, so we have some people in the community that were able to also use it, and some pretty interesting results. Tree shaking, as I was mentioning, bundling is very important for us, so we've been trying to literally shave as much as we can, and the fact that it's also usable by the community was really a great signal for us. Of course, when it comes to this type of thing, they're great, but the best part comes when you put them together. So as we mentioned, like upgrading can be a lot, can take months for some of our biggest code bases. So, you may be familiar with this. Like when you try to upgrade from one version to the next of React Native, well, in here is like from, this screenshot is from 68 to 71, I think, because that was one of the main jumps that we did in one of our monorepos. This can be pretty long and pretty big. So what we've been doing is making it effortless, in a way, at least for some code bases, I would say. So when it comes to React Native Test App, if we pair it with one of the other tools in RX Kit, you will see that things can get much faster than months. So I'm going to do a demo, and I'm going to preface this with the fact that when I was at React Native Europe earlier this year, I did do the demo live. My laptop was a 16% battery. Everyone was like, is it going to make it through? I'm not going to challenge the gods of live demos again. I wanted to, well, I'm going to just show you a video, basically. So what we have here is the first command, align depths. And as you can see, this video is now sped up. This took 3 seconds. After this, I'm going to run basically the yarn install command for the code base. And while this runs, what I'm going to explain to you is that this is Restyle. This is a Shopify design system library. So it's not like a POC project. This is a true one that exists. And we did run the align depths command, which basically goes through your code base. You tell it, hey, I want to get to this new version, 72. Then what it does is basically changes your package.json, puts the right version of all the packages that we know, and then we did simply yarn install. And at this point, what we're doing, we're already done, technically. We're already rerunning the app. So in 30 seconds, basically, we did yarn align depths. That changes the version of React Native or React Native Test App and the other libraries involved. We did a yarn install to get the new versions of the packages, and now we're going to rerun it. The key thing to understand here is that basically, when you use React Native Test App, you know all the changes, all the massive deals that I was showing earlier. You don't need to do any of that. The only things you need to do is change the version of React Native and do a yarn install and a pod install. For iOS, of course, on Android, you just do yarn install and then you run it. And as you can see here, the app is already rerunning. This took, like, you can see there, 33 seconds to, rerun the iOS app. Just for completion, I'm also going to show that Android is also reworking. Yeah, basically, it's very, very easy. We're removing a lot of friction because if our developers that are working on the experience in like this bubble where they only have their dev loop, they use this sandbox. If all it takes for them is changing the version and do a yarn install, we're removing so much friction for them to be able to work. And especially in a situation like this, where you can swap very quickly between the different versions of React Native. And there you go. As you can see here, it's working for iOS and Android pretty flawlessly. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I swear, I can also do it live. I just, it's the first talk in the morning. But yeah, so far I've been very positive, like, oh, look at this. This is so awesome. This is cool. Of course it's not. Like, we also have a lot of issues that we work through. I really appreciate everyone that's been like sending opening issues, telling us like, hey, I've used this, this doesn't work, and also sending PRs. So I just wanted to also call out, like, thank you for your contributions. You're helping us, making it better for everyone. So yeah, thank you all. And then going back to Invisible, so what I've shown you so far seems pretty much done, right? It's working. Not really. But we're kind of getting there, right? So what we built so far, to give you a super quick recap and also mention a couple of things that you mentioned so far. Basically, we have improved the ease of use. We created like all these bubble presets and everything to have smarter defaults. We're trying to be transparent. We're putting everything that we can in those open source repositories on GitHub. We have tried to improve on the upgradability story, especially for like the standard dev loops through align deps and test up. And then, of course, we have more advanced scenarios. All the things that we were able to open source are all in the RxKit repository. So, for example, if you have a brownfield app, you may want to look at the React Native host library that we have in there. Callstack did also publish a blog post about that. We do have tree shaking. We have some things that work better for monorepos and TypeScript. So that's great, right? It's all great. We've been doing a lot, and everything is working. It's not enough. So basically, what has been going on is that our leadership is like, yeah, all good, all fine, but I want more. I want to take your React Native feature that you build here, and I want to put it on any app. I don't want to be forced to only put it in one or two apps that already have all the things being built in for brownfield support. And also, why can I not just use my web code? I wrote a React version of this. Why can I just want to take this thing that I wrote once and I wanted to make it work on all these different platforms. And basically what these things have in common is that our leadership kind of wants developer velocity. Like, they want to increase the developer velocity. They want to take the code as quickly as possible from the hands of the developer into production across all our platforms. Because again, at Microsoft, it's not only we're trying to deliver to iOS and Android, but iOS, Android, Windows, macOS, and web. So it's a bit more, and especially when these apps are so big, so full of features, things can take months or years. So developer velocity is something that we're really trying to focus on right now. So in a way, what they're asking, developer velocity, they want this like web and React Native overlap to be much more prominent. So they kind of want universal code, question mark? This is kind of hard, right? So let me give you a quick example of what this could look like. So what we have here is basically a Vite text app. Like, I literally just did like Vite init. And in here, the only thing that exists that is kind of out of the template is this use battery status. It's just a hook. It goes into the web API for the battery status, and it shows it. Very easy, very simple. Like, the battery is 100%, so we have 100%. What would it take you to make it work in React Native? Like, just out of the box, the exact same code. Well, of course, there's going to be a magic trick, but what I'm going to show you is that we figured out a way that you can take that web code, that folder, the app that I was showing earlier is within this test app. I can just import the exact same file, use the hook, and then in a React Native fashion with a view and a label, I can make it work there. It's literally the exact same code. And to prove it, now we have 1 showing everywhere. On iOS, it's showing -1 because reasons. If I change the code to 100, like I do the multiplication here, and I just save, as you can see, it's working everywhere. So this is to prove that this can be somehow achieved. But what does it take to get there? Of course, like, this was a very it's not like the previous example where everything's like, no, this is all in production. These are things that actually exist. No, this is very custom, of course. But it was just to prove the point. So the main thing to get some code to work within web and native is, if you look at this code, this is basically the one that I was using earlier, is that we have this web API. We have this navigator with the get battery, and it's something that we don't have in React Native. So how do we deal with that? Well, first off, web APIs, what are those? If you don't know, you probably all know, but basically these are like the ways that the web coders, they can interact with the browser to get extra features. And the nice thing about them is that they're well-defined and standardized. This means that if you need to interact with the battery, there's the battery API there, and that's the way it's supposed to be interacted with. Like the methods, what comes back from it, that's all defined. You don't need to come up with your own solution for it. You don't need to say, oh, how am I going to call this method? How am I going to pick up the battery level? You just use this web API. And there are a lot of those, of course, for all the web. It's more than 1,000. And because it's standard, it means there's no room for interpretation, which is something that is very, very interesting, because all of a sudden, like, it's just a matter of implementing it, right? Of course, we don't have it for React Native, but the more we started thinking about it, the more we were like, what would it take? So we started doing a bit of an investigation, and we basically did a massive script. You don't need to read any of this, don't worry. We were like, okay, let's take all the interfaces. Let's filter out the ones that we don't want, and let's check how many of them we are left with. And basically from 1,000, we went down to 200, which is like, okay, this is still a lot. So what we realized is that if we were ever to try something like this, to implement these web APIs for React Native, is first off, we need to do it intentionally. We only implement what we need for our products. The second thing is, of course, is a pay for play. If we were to implement a web API, we need to implement it for Android, iOS, macOS, and Windows. If we implement 2, we have like 8 different implementations. In your final bundle, you only need the specific one. You only need, like in the iOS one, you need the battery for iOS. So we needed to figure out a way to make the tooling, the bundler, smarter. And of course, we tried to go for the open source route because we want everyone to benefit from it. We really believe in open source. I'm from Microsoft. Some people are still like, Microsoft and open source. No, we really are committed to it. I can swear by that. And so the first thing that we did was actually an RFC. We did this RFC earlier this year. It's public on the RNskit monorepo. We've been having conversations on that. This is like the big picture RFC where we're trying to gather all the different ideas. And of course, for us, this means that these things need to work on iOS, Android, Windows, and macOS. And I just wanted to very quickly call out the fact that we've been talking with the Meta people, the Meta engineers on this RFC. The goal is very much like to collaborate. We really want this to be as transparent and as collaborative as possible. So also, really, if you're interested in this problem, like this RFC is where we're trying to solve the big picture conversations about it. So please have a read. I already know one person in this room that's left some comments, so thank you. And yeah, it's, let us know your thoughts. It's there. It's for you to read and comment. Of course, the very next step after that is what I was showing you earlier. There's actually a pull request that you can go to. It's a draft pull request with all the instructions to run it locally. But basically, we did a web battery API, sorry, a battery status API, which also turns out it doesn't really, it's deprecated because security reasons. So we're like, we picked one and we picked the worst possible one. It's like, whatever. It's just a POC, so it works good enough. Of course, the step after that, because now we've been working on this for a couple of months, is that we are still improving. We're still learning a lot. We're still trying to make things better and adjust to the requirements that come up in the RFC and those things. So for example, for the battery status web API, we did end up merging the PR, and it has all 4 platforms working. So you can also test it on Windows and macOS, and it's still like very much in POC status. Like it's just there to prove the point. And then the other big thing that we've improved on is that initial filtering script I was showing, we binned it because we're like, well, it's very much arbitrary. We were like choosing kind of like out of the blue, like which ones we wanted and which ones we didn't. So we made a better tool with Rust to kind of like go through a code base and figure out which web APIs are used in that code base. And that helps us in making data-driven decisions, which is very important, especially for something of this size. So yeah, this is pretty much it. It's like the grand master plan, what me and my colleagues have been working on, what we'll work on a lot still. Of course, it's very much experimental, so please don't take this to production anywhere. It's not ready. It's gonna be years probably before it's in a good shape for that. And of course, I was mentioning earlier that the idea is to collaborate, and we've been interacting with Meta. Meta has already put out a few RFCs of their own, a few blog posts in this area, so we're really looking forward to collaborate more and share as much as we can as we go along the way and figure out together the solutions. But yeah, closing. We're slightly over time, so I'm going to be very quick. Developer experience is paramount at Microsoft. We've been doing a lot. We've been integrating the developer experience as much as we can. We've been putting everything in open source so that everyone can leverage those, but it's not enough. So what we've been doing is trying to raise the bar, make it so much better, and making this web code into universal code. At least right now it's in this experimental phase. And we really think that collaboration is key, and this is worth investigating. So maybe next year I'm going to have an actual talk where I'm going to tell you, this is actually working, I was right. We'll see about that, but probably it's going to be. But what I think is that once we get there, if we get there, basically that's what truly invisible will look like. You will only write your code once, you will write it in your browser, and then magically the code will work on all the platforms. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to me. These are a bunch of things. That's me. Thank you.